So here, I'm going to take a sip of beer. I'm going to include this in the audio. This is important.
All right, cool. That's always important.
Okay. So I am Alan, aka Game Lark, and this is Devil May Play.
Yes, it is. And I am Trip. And yeah, so I'm actually not entirely sure what we are talking about today. Lark, do you know?
I do. But first, I want to talk about my week because I'm selfish. No. It's been a long week. And it's nice to just kick back and relax and talk with a good friend. So my wife had the stomach flu this weekend, so I had to take care of Finn while trying to quarantine her, which was fun. And then he got a fever Monday and Tuesday, so then there was that. So it's been a long week. Yeah.
I was going to say, I feel like talking to you and comparing weeks, it's like it puts things in perspective for me, because anytime something, stressful is happening in my life, I can just think, well, at least I don't have a literal small human that I need to take care of.
I mean, it's not that bad. For me, it's just tired. You're just tired all the time. That's what every parent says, but it's true. If you think about it, right? You get up. If it's a good day, he sleeps until 6:30, so I can get a shower and eat before he gets up. But if he's up at 5:45 like he was today, that means I've got to change him, get him, feed him while I'm eating. It's just coordinating a whole nother human being. It's hard enough to get yourself up out of bed in the morning, and then you have another human being you have to take care of. And by the time the day's over, it's 9 o'clock. And you're shit, I don't feel like doing anything. Unless it's, you basically have a choice of, do you want to stay up late and play video games, or do you want to just kind of crash and zone out? And sometimes I choose, crash and zone out. But I've been playing Uncharted, The Lost Legacy, so that's good. And that's kind of it's not too challenging of a game that I can't enjoy it, even if I'm a little bit tired.
Meanwhile, I just have enough trouble trying to deal with one human being being me. On my end, I've just been trying to, get things together, organize a bit more, because, since not even technically anymore, I literally work from home when it comes to both my YouTube channel and Comicsverse. And it's a double-edged sword, because on one hand, you have all this freedom. On the other hand, you have all of this freedom. So
right.
You have to be the one who determines when you get up, when you're going to work. You need to actually
motivate yourself, basically.
Yeah, but not even just that. You need to actually, at least for me, set aside time. Actually kind of organize shit a bit. And I'm not used to that. I'm still having trouble with the whole adulting thing. So I'm used to everything being on a schedule. So I wake up, I go to school, and then I go home and do homework for a few hours. Then I do whatever the hell I want. Now it's just, technically I can do whatever the hell I want anytime. And, I'll get my work done. I can do that whenever. And then next thing you know, it's been a week and I haven't put out anything, So it's just a bit of adjusting. But
the truth is, I agree with you. When you have a day where you don't have anything to do, it's the hardest to get things done. It's the days where I have a ton of shit. It's kind of like when you're in school and you're procrastinating, and then it's crunch time, and you're your body, you activate Super Saiyan mode, and you're okay, I could do it. I used to cram for papers for English classes, and I would literally play video games, usually Call of Duty, Modern Warfare, until 11 o'clock at night. And then I would read whatever book I was supposed to from 11 to 2 or 3. I'd chug 2 5-hour energies, and then I'd write the paper between 2 or 3 in the morning until literally right before class. Usually 30 minutes, and then I'm running to school, and then I just turn in the paper and go home and go to sleep. So it's it's not a healthy way to do things, but what I'm trying to say is the whole point of this was, I feel when you have days where there's no commitments, nothing that you have scheduled, are the hardest days to get yourself motivated to do something and be okay, I'm in a pattern now, I'm in a routine,
Yeah, there's something about terrifying, crushing anxiety that forces you to be motivated.
Right.
It's the difference between the frog in boiling water and putting a frog in water and then slowly turning the heat up. You're not going to get that same reaction in the way you need it to be. So yeah, it's just an adjustment, but it's really interesting. I have a lot of stuff I have to do. I mean, it's a good problem to have, I guess.
Yeah.
So I can't really be complaining about it, but
you'll get there. You'll learn to adult. I still struggle with it too, man, and I'm certainly no model, though I still don't know what the hell 401ks do really or how they work. And healthcare, thank God I'm on my wife's because I don't really get it. I've had it explained to me like 5 times and they just use acronyms I don't know. So anyways.
It's ironic because I do know what a 401k is, but I still sometimes forget how to tie a tie. So I'm just all backwards with that shit.
That's funny. Well, anyways, what we're talking about today is our favorite video games from 2017. And I'm going to do that thing that some YouTubers do or other people do that make lists where I say it can be anything you played in 2017. Because truthfully, I didn't play a ton of games that came out last year. Played like 2 big ones. But I played some older games. So I'm going to open that up and give you that option as well if you want to talk about games that you played just in the year of 2017.
Well, yeah, that sounds like a really good idea. I mean, honestly, I didn't play that many new games for 2017 either. It's more of a, I guess you could say, an issue of finances than anything else. Most of the games that I played were either for reviews for the site or... No, yeah, that's mostly the games I played, and a lot of them were not good, so none of those will be on my list. But yeah, I don't know if you mind me disclosing this, Lark, but we already kind of did an episode like this, and suffice to say we had some technical difficulties. I explained this in the episode, and it was kind of funny watching it back. I inadvertently had the first sugar high I've had in my life since I was a small child. Apparently, smoothies have a shit ton of sugar in them. So when the episode started, I was kind of laid back and chill. And then I just, I was jittering. I was super high energy, and since Lark was sick, he was super low energy. So it was just this really weird contrast between the two of us that was really jarring for me. So I was like, I don't know what I can do with this. But yeah, long story short, we mostly focused on, we didn't make a list, we focused on 2 games. I'm not gonna reveal them now,
well,
I don't think.
I'm still gonna talk about them, but I've kind of got my thoughts a little bit more consolidated. Also, if I sound really sexy or sick, I guess depending on how you think of it, it's because I got my baby asleep and I don't want to wake him up. But I still have lots of energy, so I can talk really fast. No, just kidding. I'm not going to do that.
I don't know what accent you were going for, but it kind of made me want to kill myself and everyone around me.
Wasn't it? So actually, I'm kind of in a character here. I'm going to do a segue that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. So this is a funny story. Actually, Sarah and I met in college at a radio show, a college radio show that ran from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. that our friends hosted. And my DJ name was DJ E Money because my nickname was E, not because of the drug. So I would always get on and I would read these PSAs. Like we always had to do a PSA for every show. And I'd do my best like Snoop Dogg impersonation. And it'd always be like this really smooth, like, Saturday, we got this. Like, so I'm kind of channeling that more like vibe thing going on now versus my typical, whatever. Shenanigans. Charlie Kelly voice.
I just want to say, out of all the things that we have talked about on this podcast, and I'm sure the same thing will happen to me too, that what you just said dated you so much. None of what you said was relevant to anyone in my age group.
Oh, you're such an asshole. All right, so anyways, back to video games. Let me start off.
And now I just dated myself.
I'm old, okay? I'm 30. I feel like I'm falling apart. God, you just...
And apparently I'm a baby.
But anyways, that has nothing to do with top games. I'm going to talk about what I talked about the episode that we had to scratch, which is Super Mario Odyssey and Legend of Zelda, and I think I'm going to start with Super Mario Odyssey because that was definitely my top game of the year. There's a lot that has been said about this game for good reason, good and bad. I mean, I'm not saying it's a flawless game, but overall for me, it was the most consistent, fun, and rewarding experience I had as a gamer all year, pretty much, like start to finish. And I did 100% the game. Minus the costumes because I don't feel like fucking coin farming for 2 hours. So anyways, the things that I really want to talk about, it's actually something that another YouTuber, Mark Brown, that I'm a big fan of, Game Maker's Toolkit, he does a lot of other series. He does a series called Boss Keys too. Anyways, he talked about the versatility of the hat and how Nintendo tends to design They're games around a core gameplay principle. So for Splatoon, it was the ink. For Super Mario Odyssey, it was the hat. And the hat is not only used as a weapon, you can attack enemies with it, you can capture people with it, and you can also use it for platforming opportunities. So the things that I really love about this game, among many, many other things, when you beat the game isn't really over. You know what I mean? You beat the game and then you go back into every single world, and every single world has additional challenge stages as well as additional moons that generally require a bit more mastery of the move set. And the move set to me that is the most important is the leap hat combo. So where you toss your cap and then you leap onto the cap and then you toss the cap again and then you leap again. It really, really changes how you move across levels, how you handle challenge stages, and it basically becomes like, it's like you go through the level the first time, you learn the layout, and then you go back and you're just crushing it. Like the satisfaction that comes from just being able to get through all these shortcuts that you make yourself, the game doesn't necessarily advertise to you. It's indescribable. And my favorite stage in the game is New Donk City for that reason. Is it just that there's just endless platforming. Like if I took a stage like that and I had the mechanics of, say, something like Assassin's Creed or the Shadow of Mordor series where climbing is really a breeze and you basically just hold up on the button, the stage would not be nearly as remarkable. It's the platforming options you have as Mario, whether you capture a power line or you capture what are those little traffic cone things, or you jump off a taxi, or like there's endless possibilities for how you get around that city, and that's what makes it fun. It's not easy, but at the same time, when you really start getting better at the game, you can really do some cool things. And then what were you gonna say? Sorry, I just cut you off.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, building on what you just said, I feel like you really reach at the main point here. It's a game that wants you to have fun,
right?
And I know that sounds like, it sounds stupid to say because games are supposed to be fun, and most good games are. I would say all good games are. That's part of what makes them games. But with Super Mario Odyssey, it seems every single second, every single aspect of that game is all feeding into how can we make sure the player is having fun. So, sure. A lot of stuff goes into games. You have the actual gameplay, you have the world building, you have the story, you have the environments. In Super Mario Odyssey, all of that feeds back into how can we make this fun for the player. You brought up New Donk City. Mm-hmm. On one hand, that's just a fucking gorgeous, creative, interesting level to have in a Mario game. But at the same time, as you brought up, the level design is not just pretty and unique and interesting to look at. It all comes back to fun. It comes back to the power lines. It comes back to using the skyscrapers in interesting ways. It comes back to, getting on that moped and driving around. It comes back to using the cars as platforms and all of that. It all comes back to fun with Super Mario Odyssey. I said this in the episode we scrapped, and we're going to be saying that a lot because we don't want to retread that episode, but every now and then if I remember something I said, I'm going to try and say it. But I said it's a game that just feels nice. And that doesn't mean it's not challenging. That doesn't mean that it's not a deep game, but it's nice. It just seems so committed to making sure you have a good time. And it's so committed to creating variety based on its simple premise, like you said with the hat. There's so much you can do in this game. It's a game that lets a good player be good at the game, and it's a game that just wants you to have fun.
Yes. And another thing I'd really like to address, and I've seen this is addressing some of the criticisms I've seen of the game, which are, there's too many moons. Okay, well, there's a lot of things I could say about this. Nintendo has been doing some interesting things with rewards lately, specifically going back to Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, where they have 900 Korok seeds in the game, which is absurd. That's a lot of Korok seeds. But they don't give players any reward for collecting them all past 500. And then the same way for Super Mario Odyssey. In fact, with Zelda, they give you a golden piece of shit statue, which I think is hilarious. They're definitely trolling collectionists. And I don't have a problem with people that play games for the platinum trophies or whatever. I think that's a perfectly valid way to play a game if that's what you want to play. But I think Nintendo's point was, this is not a checklist. You should be enjoying yourself. So why did you collect these 400 extra seeds you didn't need? like fine, but there's no real point to it. And in Super Mario Odyssey, I think the people that are complaining about the moons that are too easy or the fact that there are so many moons in every world are missing the point. Especially the people that complain like, well, the end game content isn't worth it. You know, once again, you only need like 500 something moons to get the final stages in the game. The rest of the moons you really don't need to collect. However, I was having so much fun and I enjoyed the challenge of trying to collect those moons. The moon is the moon is not even really the reward. The reward is completing whatever section you needed to complete. The reward is finding these moons and random places in random ways you weren't expecting. That's the reward.
Right.
It's not like, oh, I have 999 moons. Now I get this special bonus stage. It's like you're missing the point. The point was you had fun the entire time you were doing it. And now there's nothing left for you to do in the game. Like you've played this game to completion. That's a good feeling. And it's not a feeling I've had often because there are a few games where I feel so invested that I want to play every single second I can before I feel like I've gotten everything out of the game. The last game I think that I really felt that way was Witcher 3. So, and obviously, it's Witcher 3.
I feel like if you're mad at some of the moons being too easy in Super Mario Odyssey, then I don't think you're playing it for the right reason. Like, not every game has to or should force difficulty on you. And I feel like with Super Mario Odyssey, like you said, it's about how the moons are presented when some of them are hidden. Some of them requires very interesting and fun and clever choices for the player to reach. And I just feel like in regards to the super easy to find moons, I'm trying to figure out what the problem would be with that when you have so many interesting moons to find.
The reward really isn't the moon. It's just there. It's like a reinforcement for like, hey, you did something cool and here's your reward. But the reward to me is really just getting through some of those tougher stages or figuring out that one thing like, oh, cool. Yeah, I totally didn't think of that. You know, that moment when you detect like the first pattern of moons that you collect later on, or you get pissed off and go on Google and then you say, shit, I should have realized that.
Right. It's about giving the player the chance to make their own challenge, I feel like. Yes, there's a lot of easy moons, but I feel like that's a better way to do difficulty than, say, just like a difficulty slider or whatnot.
You should go on YouTube. There's tons of people that are playing through this game, like minimum jump challenges, like trying to make the challenge stages even more challenging. Like people are having fun with it. They're making their own like games out of it.
And granted, not every game can pull that sort of thing off. I would say if it was another game, I would definitely say, yeah, there can be games that are too easy and you shouldn't always have to make your own fun. But the whole point of Super Mario Odyssey is its versatility, is what you can do with those core mechanics. So I feel like in a game like that, where the core moment-to-moment gameplay is so top-notch, it's perfectly okay to allow the player to make their own challenge. If you just want to find the super easy moons, then sure. If you don't, then like you place your own value on those moons. Like I wouldn't play. I'll agree with one thing. I wouldn't place that much value on a moon that was just there for me. I'd just be like, oh, cool, another moon, whatever. But that doesn't take away from the enjoyment I get from the super difficult moons that need to be very smart and clever to get. So I feel like there is a place for making your own fun and making your own challenge in a game that's just that strong and confident in its core mechanics.
Indeed. What about you? What would you say favorite game or favorite games? Pick one and what do you have?
Well, honestly, it's funny because last time we did this, we both agreed on Super Mario Odyssey. We were actually between Odyssey and Breath of the Wild. And on one hand, I'm glad we scrapped that episode because it sounded like we were shitting on Breath of the Wild a lot as we went on, even though like we both love that game. Like
I do,
yeah, I love that game.
I think, but sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, but I think the reason why we ended up going with Odyssey was because it just never let up. Like there are certain issues that Breath of the Wild has. That game was revolutionary. That game is amazing. That game set the stage for what I think all Legend of Zelda games should be in the future. I want them to take that template and build upon it. Like we said in the last episode, we want more dungeons, more dungeon variety. We want, we want to see them add back on the features that were in older Zelda games that have been built up over the years. But this core kind of mechanical reboot, not really a story reboot, but a mechanical reboot of the game was brilliant. This is exactly what they should have done. Yes. But that fucking weapon durability, man.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of things have been said about it, but
no excuse. I challenge you. I don't challenge, like, if you like it, that's fine. I challenge you to tell me that I can't criticize that shit. Because a lot of people say, no, you just don't get it. No, I do. I love durability when it's done right. I love any kind of survival mechanics in a game. That's one of my favorite things, especially in either action adventure or RPGs. I love that sort of shit. But guys, my sword shouldn't break after like 2 fights. It takes away any measure of attachment you get to these weapons. I shouldn't go into battle. I shouldn't not want to fight because I'm afraid my weapons will break and because I will need them for later. I shouldn't open a chest and see an awesome looking weapon with a lot of damage and feel disappointed because I know it's just a quickly consumable resource. There needs to be some manner of repairing all of your weapons if you so choose. If you get attached to one, there should always be a way to repair it. Unless it's like a stick or something, anything above a stick should be repairable in some way. I don't truck with permanently breakable weapons, especially ones that break that quickly. And here I go again, sounding like I'm shitting on one of my favorite games.
Let me flip that coin and talk about what it did well, why it was so close to being number one for me. In terms of, let's say, vision and ambition, I think Breath of the Wild definitely beats Super Mario Odyssey. Super Mario Odyssey is a nice, I wouldn't say reinvention, but it's a nice sidestep from where the series was going with 3D World. It's kind of a return to roots, to the more exploration-based gameplay of Super Mario 64 and Sunshine. This is not an original thought. You see it everywhere, and the hat mechanic is just, it's just that the game was so perfectly executed. Like I said, there was no parts that dragged. With Breath of the Wild, like you said, I'm more excited for what comes next because I think they did so many things right, and given that template, they could do so much more with it. Like the systems-based gameplay, isn't that what you call it? Is that systems-based? There's some term you always use.
That's a term. I talk about dynamic gameplay a lot, but it's a similar thing what you're talking about.
What I'm saying is that the gameplay opportunities in Breath of the Wild are just limitless. Like you watch people, how they speed run, and then how they use stasis to hit rocks or boulders or whatever the case may be. I mean, there were moments in that game where it was just true awe. Like I'm trying to think, like when I came out of Kakariko Village and looked down on whatever those plains are right before you get to the water, the Zora domain. Okay, so there's like a big swamp area, and like there's a hill, and you're looking down, and I'm just like, I'm going there. I can go everywhere I'm seeing right now. There's moments of just sheer like majesty where you like stop for a second and just look at the game. Not to mention, you really did just feel like you were on an adventure. I felt like the games, the Zelda games, as they went on from Ocarina of Time, they just kind of became more and more and more linear and predictable. And it was disappointing to me. It's tough because like Twilight Princess for me was one of the games that I struggle with because the music's awesome. Some parts of the game are great, but it just felt so disparate. It felt like these sections did not interrelate at all. You would get a cool item and use it only in one temple versus Breath of the Wild, where they give you all your, like, I don't want to call them weapons, but your equipment per se at the beginning of the game.
Powers.
Yeah, your powers. You get all of them at the beginning of the game, which does kind of create some issues, not a ton, but some. But it's still such a radical change for the gameplay, where instead of like Twilight Princess, where these areas felt like kind of just separated and distant, and it didn't really feel like one big world, it felt like a lot of different areas. You have something like Breath of the Wild, where I mean, I remember starting out that game and seeing, I don't know the name of the bird, but the bird and Rito Village, and just being like, holy shit, that's a bird. Like, that's a huge ass bird. Like, I mean, those moments of just realizing, like, this is a world. And, you know, all the little characters and all the little things you just can't, you forget about. But when they happen, they really just, I don't even want to say you warm your heart. They just enhance that experience. And I mean, I put 150 hours into the game, so clearly I enjoyed it. And I'm debating on whether I want to buy it again for the Switch. But, you know, when people talk about the flaws of the game, it's only because I think the flaws to me don't really become apparent as bad as they do in the second half. And I do think maybe there's a way, if I went back and replayed it, to still get some more enjoyment out of it. Maybe play it slightly differently. You know what I mean? Like, maybe make it a challenge to go up against some of the enemies where I normally would lose a ton of weapons. And instead of just kind of taking the direct approach, like look to the environment to see if I can, you know, make a challenge for myself out of it. I haven't played any of the DLC. I'm just saying that. I know there's 2 pieces of DLC for it, but at the very least, you know, even if that game stumbled towards the second half, I think if they use this template and they really tweak some of the issues that they had, the weapon system, the dungeons, I'm not even gonna knock the shrines. I think the Divine Beast could have been slightly better, or there could have been traditional dungeons in some of those sections somehow. I don't know. Or even better yet, you know, use more of environmental puzzles. And, you know, I really enjoyed the shrines where there's only a couple where you had to go from one shrine to another and kind of go back and forth. So really find a way to create these huge environmental dungeons. I don't know how you do it, but my point is, this is definitely the in my opinion, the most ambitious Zelda game since at least, I'm going to say probably Ocarina of Time, when they made that switch from 2D to 3D.
Yeah,
Wind Waker was
close,
agree. But Wind Waker really was just like, hey, now there's just a bunch of water. And it was still fun. I love that game. But I don't think it was quite the drastic shakeup that this was. And it did turn off a lot of long-time Zelda fans. I know there are some people that were turned off by the open world mechanics and like, not my Zelda, when, you know, you don't have to do the dungeons in a certain path. And I get some of the complaints, but you know, I've heard people saying, well, Zelda is an open world. I'm like, well, this one is. So
I mean, the first one was.
I know.
I mean, have you ever played the first one?
I know. And somehow people don't consider the first one Zelda.
That's okay. Really dumb. Like, you didn't have to do the dungeons in order in the first one either. So I don't know. I remember as a little kid, I thought Wind Waker was weird because I was like, because that was before I knew about, you know, the whole multiple Link shit that was going on. So I'm like, wait, why does Link now have a grandmother and a sister, and where is Kokiri for? I was just confused, like, story-wise, because even when I was a little kid, I was still a nerd who got pissed off about lore stuff.
Where's the consistency?
That was basically me. But
so did you lose your mind when the X-Men movies came out and every single one of them just fucking destroyed the continuity of the previous ones?
You're gonna...
Am I triggering you right now?
No, you're gonna be mad at me because I don't think I ever saw, like, the first 3 X-Men movies.
It's really not even the first 3 where the continuity starts to get screwed. It's like later on when they're just like, oh, this character that was like a full-grown woman is now a teenager, but it's 20 years after that movie.
What? The first one I saw all the way through was, I believe, what was it? It was I think it was Days of Future Past, actually.
Wow.
And yeah, I really liked that one. And then they fucked it up with Apocalypse. Ugh. Apocalypse was the worst piece of shit I've seen in a long... That movie really pissed me off. I know we're going on a little tangent here, but just I need to get this off my chest. That movie pissed me off. Like, it made me... It insulted me that Bryan Singer... It was Bryan Singer who directed that piece of shit, right?
Yeah.
I think it was. I'm going to say Bryan Singer just in case
it was.
Okay, yeah. That Bryan Singer is going to bring us that 2006 bullshit, that old superhero shtick that is so tired and done. Like, I was just so pissed at that movie.
He's got bigger problems than X-Men Apocalypse now.
What do you mean? What is he doing lately?
Allegations of underage child sex.
Oh my god!
You didn't know that, dude? That was like an open secret for many, many years.
I did not know that.
Well, anyways, it's the least of his problems now.
Yeah. I mean, this podcast is also about movies, so that wasn't too much of a divergence.
Yeah.
But Jesus Christ, man. Can people just stop being creeps?
I mean,
just calm the fuck down.
Yeah. Well, like I said, we won't have to worry about. I don't think he'll be in another X-Men movie.
But anyway, back to
video games.
Back to video games.
And not Bryan Singer. I
actually have one thing I wanted to say about Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. Something that could be an improvement without taking away from what they did in Breath of the Wild.
Sure.
I've been thinking about this for well, honestly, just the past 30 seconds, but I think it's a moderately good idea because you and I have talked about how it's a double-edged sword giving you all your powers at the beginning. And how there's not, the traditional Zelda or Link getting gear as he goes through and, using that gear in the dungeon and being able to access parts of the world you couldn't beforehand. Here's my idea. In the next game, it should be technically possible to complete the entire game without any additional gear, just the powers you get at the beginning. But you still have the gear, and that will be the, more mainstream way of completing things. So you'll still get a hook shot at some point. You'll still get, other pieces of cool gear that we've come to know and love in Legend of Zelda that you're quote unquote supposed to use. And even in those cases, you'll still have, that Breath of the Wild dynamic content. You may be able to use one piece of gear in a way that the developers may not have expected you to use to get past a certain place, but you still get the gear, you still get the benefit of the gear, you still get the sense of progression of Link getting better at things, which I think was missing from Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
No. By making you able to complete tasks that would have been difficult or at first glance impossible, but technically you can still beat the entire game without any gear and just with your powers. I think that would be a good middle ground.
That's interesting you say that because I believe I read an interview where they originally had a hook shot in the game, which would have been sick because then you could have glided around and used the hook shot and kind of grabbed on stuff, and that would have made for some nice boss battles.
That should have been end game or right before you beat Ganon, right before you get to Ganon, you get a hook shot.
Come on.
Is that a spoiler? Is that a spoiler? At some point, Link is gonna fight Ganon.
Yeah. Well, here I've got an idea. So we've talked about some of our favorite games from 2017. In addition to Zelda and Super Mario Odyssey, I have been playing. I got Mario, I always get the goddamn name wrong. Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle from my parents as a Christmas gift. Thank you, Mom and Dad. And I got Uncharted Lost Legacy, which I talked about from, well, I'm going to call her my sister-in-law because she's going to be that someday. But anyways, so I've been playing those, and both of those games are really fun. Definitely not better than Super Mario Odyssey. But I wanted to talk real quick about games that we're looking forward to in 2018. And I've got one that I'm really looking forward to. And just today, I was looking up some interviews and some gameplay footage and really haven't seen a ton of buzz for this game. The new God of War game. And just so you all know, I'm a big mythology buff. I'm writing a mythology book series. I grew up with the Iliad and the Odyssey. There's very few great mythology movies, but I love Jason the Argonauts. And even though I never beat God of War 1 and 2, I did play them. And God of War 3, I beat in one night. I love the atmosphere, the tone, the violence, the sex mini games, all of it. But this new one looks really interesting. And when they showed the first trailer for it, I think it was E3 2016, they showed that it was Kratos in a Norse setting. And I was like, oh my God, this is what David Jaffe always wanted to do with God of War. Like, for those of you that don't know, the original plan was to have Kratos enter into different mythologies after God of War 2, I want to say. But for whatever reason, they didn't for 3. I think that's the way it worked. But either way, it was his original vision for Kratos to go into other mythologies, which, that's a nerdgasm for me. I'm just like, oh, yeah. And funny enough, I was watching an interview. We'll post probably some of these links in the description. I was watching an interview with the game's creative director where he was talking about narrowing down their choices for where would Kratos go. And it was between Norse mythology and Egyptian mythology. And he was really happy they went with Norse, at least for this game, because, with Assassin's Creed Origins just coming out, you don't want to have that, I don't want to call it competition, but oversaturation perhaps of that mythology. Plus it leaves them some options in the future. But they look to have made some serious changes to both the combat and to the story, and even the way you traverse the world. But it still looks like a great God of War game, in my opinion. So that's one game that's coming out hopefully soon. I think the rumors I'm seeing is March 2018 this year. So.
Oh, cool. Speaking of God of War, recently on Reddit, there was some, I can't remember if these were rumors or if there was actual like design documents, but there are, or apparently were plans for a God of War game set in the Americas, like Mayan, Aztec, Incan.
I wouldn't be surprised.
And I am all about that shit, man. Like I'm obsessed with Egypt, as you guys know. I'm also obsessed with anything from like pre-Columbian America. I would love to see any kind of fantasy game in like the Aztec world or some shit like that. That would be so freaking awesome.
Did hint that they may go there in the future, which I think is smart, because I think by the time, like, God of War 3 was great, but by the time God of War, I want to say Judgment, is that it? Ascension? Was a prequel. By the time that game came out, everyone was just like, really? Like, why are we doing a prequel? Like, you guys have filled in the timeline so much. Like, can we just be done with the Greek setting? So giving it some time off and then choosing a different mythology was a smart move, I think. But what about you? Any games coming up that you're like super stoked on? Any like
several actually. First off, Far Cry 5. Now, you know that on this show we love to make fun of Ubisoft. We love to just trash and thrash Ubisoft, but they've been making some damn good games lately, and I feel like I criticize them so much because, just like I said in my latest video, I criticize the things that I love, and as much as I hate to admit it, and as much as I admit it's kind of a depressing, abusive relationship, I do in a sense love Ubisoft. So, Watch Dogs 2, I love that game. It was great. Assassin's Creed Origins, I love that game. It was great. I'm looking forward to seeing what they will do with Far Cry 5, especially because, I mean, in kind of an ironic way, they're going really unique with the setting. You wouldn't, on face value, you wouldn't think, oh, setting it in America is unique at all, but they're setting a Far Cry game in the United States of America. That's fucking insane, and I really want to see where they go with that. Yeah, I don't know. You've heard the basics of the game, correct?
Yeah, I know the basic storyline.
Yeah,
it's like a cult, but it's kind of like a pseudo Christian cult. Which, I mean, I'm down, man. Cults scare the shit out of me.
Fuck yeah! It's set in like Montana.
Yeah.
Like, so, and nobody, like, I'm not hating on Montana. I mean, it's a beautiful state, but like, not a lot of people live there. So if you were going to set a Far Cry game in an American state, I could only even semi-believe it if it was in a place like Montana, where like there could be like a really isolated small town that could get taken over by some kind of pseudo-state cult.
I mean, you could also do like Far Cry Florida, and like, I don't know, Florida's pretty scary too.
Yeah, but I feel like
it's not remote.
I feel like the feds are constantly looking at Florida. They're waiting for Florida to do some crazy shit like that.
True.
Nobody's expecting that from Montana. But on top of that, I'm actually looking at a list. It's funny, I already had it up, a list of upcoming games that people are anticipating. Is it cheating, or is it just being smart? Yeah, I guess I'm cheating. But yeah, Vampire, actually. Have you heard of that one, Lark?
Yeah, is that the one where you're like, I'm trying to think if I can remember this right. You see how you kill people, and then you see like their lives or something like that, or
no. It's an RPG. I mean, that might be an aspect of it. I'm not sure. It's an action RPG, and you are a vampire in the 1800s, and you're also a doctor. You're a doctor who's trying to cure like a plague that's going around, and you end up becoming a vampire. And yeah, it's really interesting. Again, it has all the stuff I like. It's an RPG that's taken out of, a medieval setting. It's still fantasy, and I love when people mix fantasy with different time periods. And I kind of really like vampires. Like, I know that like, even if you take Twilight out of the picture, that still brings up a bunch of like negative connotations when you say, oh, I'm really into vampires. But I've always really been into vampires, and I love any game that lets you be a vampire. It was literally I'm not even kidding, literally a dream of mine, in every definition of the term, a dream of mine, to own, play, or live in an action RPG about vampires. So obviously I love Vampire the Masquerade as well. That's a game I love, but I'm super into this. I want to see it be good, and I just can't wait for that game to come out.
Awesome. So those are some games you're looking forward to. I'm looking forward to God of War and Cyberpunk 2077 whenever it releases.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Which is probably like 2020. We'll be on fucking Mars before that game comes out. There's the quote of the episode. We'll be on Mars before Cyberpunk 2077 comes out. But I can wait.
Hey, if it means that we can record this podcast from Mars in the year 2020, yeah. I'm game for that. I would love to record this on Mars someday.
Actually,
one day we'll be on Mars.
The funny thing was when that Mars mission was announced and they were like, we're going to pick 50 people from all around the world to live on Mars. Like, I was telling my wife about this and I was like, yeah, we're going to Mars. She's like, you're not going. I can tell you want to go. I was like, well, part of me wants to go, but
Did they actually get that, like, fun? Like, are they actually still doing that?
Know.
I feel like that was a scam.
I haven't heard anything for it in a while. Who knows? Could be.
I feel like that was a scam, and half the people who signed up aren't actually serious, because they're never coming back. Like, they're going on Mars to die. Like, not immediately, but that's where they would spend the rest of their lives.
Come on, man. Colonizing.
I mean, I'm sorry. Unless Mars is going to have an internet connection for, you know, YouTube and my Steam account, I don't want to go to Mars. That's why I said I hope one day we can record the podcast on Mars.
True.
I need Wi-Fi up there, dude.
Well, the strange thing is, I remember watching some of the interviews for the people that were trying to go to Mars, and they're all like, I don't have any loved ones. I don't have any. My parents don't care if I go. I don't really care about getting married. I'm like, wouldn't you want people that just want to go there and bang? Like, you're trying to build a colony. You don't want to find all these people that have like no sex drive. You want to populate.
I mean, I'm more just depressed for those people. Like, Jesus. I mean, I guess that's kind of who you want. People who have literally nothing to lose. Anything more to say on games that we either really loved in 2017 or games that we're really looking forward in 2018? Because can I just say it was a great game? It was a great year for games in 2017.
Yeah, I think that's something that gets like lost in the noise of all the microtransactions BS. I feel like 2017 was a year of single player games. Like, we had some amazing titles between like Horizon Zero Dawn. I keep bringing back Nier Automata, Legend of Zelda, Super Mario Odyssey, Persona 5, just like a freaking like huge list of these Titan games that were all really cool and all really different. And I think it's time for people to realize, like, if anything, it just goes to show that you can't follow trends. I mean, you see article after article, they're like, single player gaming dead? I'm like, no, it's more alive than ever when all this goddamn bullshit microtransaction, always online nonsense loot box shit is going on. People are just like, well, I'd rather just play a game where I don't get nickel and dimed. So
right, and that's why they're asking if they're dead, because publishers are trying to, they're hoping that they die. But that's what it is. Wishful thinking.
It's kind of going back to that games as a service thing we've talked about, where they don't want any game to be like a complete standalone package anymore. But hey, that's a different conversation for a different day. For now,
so yeah, I feel like this is a good place to stop. Yeah. So guys, this has been Devil May Play. I am Trip.
I am Lark.
And yeah, let us know in the comments what games you are anticipating for 2018 and what games you really, really enjoyed in 2017. There's a lot to choose from, as we were just saying. So, you know, pick your favorite, argue with your friends, and yeah, we will see you guys in the next episode.
See you.